Right. Welcome to another week of learning where we enrich ourselves and sharpen each other's knowledge on relevant topics and concepts within the governance, risk, and compliance control space. My name is Adefisaya Adefarakon, the principal consultant at Farakon and Associates, and we are a boutique GRC firm set up to help clients and stakeholders optimize their GRC journey in a bid to ensure efficiency and excellent service delivery. Our areas of expertise include internal audits, outsource and co-source, internal audits review, quality assurance review of the internal audit process, enterprise risk assessments, and the associated levers, governance framework reviews, risk and control self-assessment setup, and everything in between that end to end to optimize and elevate the value had from your GRC investments. We believe that risk management is a journey aimed at ensuring efficiency and sustainability of any business to preserve value. And so that's what we are here to do. Please feel free to reach out and then let's talk. Today we are looking at root cause analysis for enhancing internal audit effectiveness. Last week I spent some time looking at internal audit reporting using a material from the ACCA, and I believe that we found that useful. We've had very good feedbacks from that session, and so like I promised, we're going to be turning our attention to root cause analysis this week. This series on root cause analysis will consist of 3 videos because of the length. So I'm trying to break them down into short sessions of 30 minutes so that you can interact with it. You can pause anytime in between and discuss this with your team as a way of an in-house knowledge sharing session. And where you think there is a need for additional insight, please feel free to reach out to us. Knowledge management is another area of our service offering. We're going to be looking at root cause analysis as a platform to enhance our value as internal auditors. And so in this video, in today's section in part 1, I will cover the 5W1H of root cause analysis. But for the entire root cause analysis session, what you can see on my screen is what we're going to be covering. So I'm going to be breaking this down into 3 parts. Today we're going to run through the overview and the 5W1H, that is the what is root cause analysis, why should you do it, when you should do it, where should it be done, who should do it, and we'll stop today at the how. In the next video, we will zoom in on the how, we will zoom in on the process itself, how to conduct root cause analysis, the various models and tools that are available to conduct your root cause analysis. And then in the last and final video, we're going to be looking at enhancements. How do you drive enhancement of your internal audit processes and effectiveness? And then in subsequent editions, we'll try to take a case study of how to conduct a root cause analysis. Let's get started. Let's take an overview of the root cause analysis. What does it mean? It's a common term and concept, particularly within the manufacturing and healthcare sector. For people who are also familiar with the concept of quality assurance, it's also something that is an underlying factor behind those manufacturing concepts. And so just like you can see on my screen, it is more like taking a lens to zoom in and understand what is happening behind a problem. The same way a medical practitioner or physician would ask you to go for blood work, lab tests, so that they can have an idea of what exactly is wrong and then be able to come up with the appropriate treatment plan. The same thing is what the root cause analysis does for any business. So therefore, for the purpose of our discussion, I'm going to be describing root cause analysis as a structured approach to identify the underlying factors which has resulted in a deviation. So something has gone wrong. We're saying, why did it go wrong? Or how? At what point did it go wrong? Otherwise, if we don't get to the root, we would probably be dealing with the symptoms, and that will not stop a reoccurrence. And you and I agree that as internal audit professionals, one of the things that we want to achieve is to bring on board solutions and recommendations that will help the process owner and the business at large to stop an hemorrhage, to stop a bleeding completely, and fix the problem. And so that's what root cause analysis would help us to do. What root cause analysis does for a business is the same thing that clinical tests or lab tests does for a medical doctor in an attempt to treat ailments and sicknesses. And so therefore it is applicable across industries, across spectrum, across organizations, irrespective of the level of complexity, size of the enterprise, or age. Having said that, why do you need to conduct a root cause analysis? Why is it necessary? Remember, we're trying to go through the 5W1H as a model. If you are familiar with my style, that's one of my approaches to solving problems. The 5W1H helps you to answer those 6 critical questions, and then from the responses and answers, you are able to provide a solution. So the first question we've asked and answered is why? What is root cause analysis? Now we're turning our attention to the next question, to the next W, which is why should you do it? Or you could say, what are the benefits of doing it? Why is it important? A couple of reasons. Some of them includes this. Number one, it helps us to get down to the real root of a problem. And then it also helps to break it down into manageable units. We have said what we want to achieve is to be able to get to the root, the real causes of a particular breakdown in control or a gap or whatever. But at the end of the day, we're not just interested in a list of ideas. We want to be able to fix the problem totally. So root cause analysis helps us to achieve that and to be able to break the problem into sizable chunks that can be dealt with per time. It could be an entire program, but then you can break it down into manageable projects. It is also important to conduct root cause analysis because within the problem solving life cycle, it helps us to identify the what, the how, and the why something happened. For you to be able to fix a problem, you must know what has happened. That's problem definition. How did it happen? What led to it? And why it happened? What are the contributing factors? What are the enabling environment for that problem to continue to occur? And so that is something that we need to get to. And so one way to get to that point in any problem solving scenario or environment situation is to go through a root cause analysis. And then, of course, ultimately, conducting a root cause analysis helps the organization, the business, the process owner, the stakeholders who are involved, including the internal audit professionals, to be able to offer and bring on board practical solutions that are fit for purpose, that can resolve completely and finally the issue at hand. Now, what should you expect when you conduct a root cause analysis as an outcome, when it is done properly, following all necessary guidelines? What should you expect? An effective root cause analysis will focus on the cause and the effect, as well as the implementation of necessary corrective actions. If we do our root cause analysis well, it has the potential to impact the clients. Don't forget, every business is set up to serve clients, whether as a service organization, as a manufacturing company, whatever. At the end of the day, if we don't add value, we cannot generate value. Value flows when value is generated. So there is no way you can make sales if you are not creating value. And so how do you create that value in an efficient manner? Root cause analysis would help you to be able to identify clogs within your processes, to bring about improved efficiency and enhance the corporate culture aimed at delivery of top-notch services. That way, revenue can continue to grow. On the other hand, if root cause analysis is not applied when there are challenges or situations, or in retrospect to deal with certain things that we have observed as trends over time, such an organization will always be engrossed in what is called firefighting. They will always firefight. There will always be an emergency. There will always be something to deal with. And as internal auditors, you agree with me that we get called up often for this kind of firefighting activities, usually in the process of conducting investigations. When processes are broken, there will be multiple investigations that will take a lot of time. But the lesson learned from those investigations needs to be able to isolate and dissect the problems and be able to come up with root cause analysis and then provide a lasting solution. The next question is, when should we conduct a root cause analysis? It is not for every problem that we need a root cause analysis. There are some problems that we already know why they are happening. It could just be because we've chosen to accept the risk. That's why we've not done anything. And so it keeps happening, or because we feel the impact of those occurrences are low or are manageable or acceptable. In such an instance, then there's no point conducting a root cause analysis, because management has already appraised the impact of that crystallization. So that if this risk crystallizes, this is the total amount of loss that we're likely going to suffer, and if this is the total amount of loss, then we can live with it. But where there are complex problems or scenarios or challenges, difficulties or breakdowns that require a solution, then at such times, root cause analysis becomes a handy tool to quickly conduct a diagnosis. In typical consulting or advisory engagements, it is one of the things to understand the as-is process, the situation as at today, before you come up with your to-be or recommendations. And so if you follow this map from the left-hand side to the right, the starting point typically is an incident or an event that has happened. And then we're trying to see, do we understand why it has happened? Or do we not understand? Where we do not have any idea of why it has happened, then a root cause analysis is imperative, is required. Where we already have an idea, or we know the factors that contribute to it, then the solution is already known. We don't necessarily need to go through a root cause analysis because we know the root cause already. In such instances, what we need is probably monitoring that needs to be enhanced or stepped up, as well as minimization. How do you minimize occurrence? Because we already know that this thing is going to happen, and this is the reason why it is happening, and we have, you know, earmarked budgets or investments to fix it up until a particular threshold. So that's where the judgment of the CRO comes in, or is designate to say, is this risk big enough? Can we live with it, or do we want to drop it? And so, therefore, where there are such terrible or big breakdowns, there is a need to conduct root cause analysis. Where should we conduct the root cause analysis? The answer is we can actually conduct a root cause analysis at any level, at any level across the organization. For the purpose of this discussion, I'm going to suggest 3 areas. Number 1, at the process level, and for me, that's about the best place, because the process owners are in the best position to challenge or to review, to critique, what they are getting or what they are doing. So at the process level, the analysis is at micro level. It can also be done at the enterprise level, where multi-level stakeholders come together to deal with an enterprise-wide problem, particularly where it is discovered or it has been, it has been clear that the factors leading to that enterprise-wide challenge permeate the entire organization. So it's not just peculiar or isolated to a particular team. And then once that is done, who should conduct it? Who should be responsible? Who should be responsible to conduct root cause analysis? So like I said, if we're looking at the process level, then it should be the process owner. If we're looking at the enterprise level, then it should be the joint stakeholders. If we're looking at the third line validation level, then that's where internal auditors come in. So different people should be involved at different times, depending on the purpose and objective of that root cause analysis. Now, for the purpose of this discussion and this session, since we are talking about using root cause analysis as a tool for internal audit effectiveness, then the internal auditors have a role to play. So I would say, in this scenario, internal auditors working together with the process owner should be responsible, to jointly conduct a root cause analysis. Ideally, it should be by the process owner, and then the internal auditor can challenge and critique it, so that we are sure that whatever management action plan that has been agreed as a response to whatever breakdown in control or breach that has been identified will actually address that gap. It does not make sense for the auditor to keep reporting the same thing when he or she does not have any input to support the process owner to identify what will fix it. And that is where sometimes audit exception closure can become a nightmare, because from the perspective of the client, for instance, he figures out that this is the solution to a particular problem. If the internal audit team who are going to approve the closure thinks otherwise, or the second line of defense guys thinks otherwise, like we showed in the RCSA overview, there will be a divergent opinion. So it's important to have sometimes joint sessions to agree on what does good look like, what's the expectation, what kind of artifact, what kind of evidence do we need to validate that this exception or this gap is now closed and remediated. These are things that should be defined at the responsibility level. So typically, the process owner should be responsible, but internal auditors can also serve as a facilitator and challenger. Where the problem is complex, they can facilitate a root cause analysis workshop. It could also be done at internal audit function level alone, where they're just trying to do some aggregation to understand trend analysis. So there are different approaches, but responsibility cuts across stakeholders. Now the process itself, that is the H, how. So we have looked at the what, the why, the where, the when, the who. Now, how should root cause analysis be conducted? This is the real process. How should it be conducted? Root cause analysis should be conducted following this 5-step approach. You can use any tool, you can use any method, but each of those methods, whether it's a tool, whether it's 5 whys, fishbone, they will definitely go through these 5 steps. Step 1 is for you to define the problem. Be clear about the basic question that you want to resolve. Second one is that we need to be clear between the distinctions between symptoms, issues, and causes. It is very likely that there will be several issues, several symptoms, several causes. So when conducting a root cause analysis, it's important to isolate them in their different buckets. The third thing to do when conducting a root cause analysis is the need to structure the analysis using a root cause analysis approach. And this is where we will be getting into talking about different methods or different approaches to conducting root cause analysis. Now, at that point, that is not the end of the journey or the exercise. Conducting a root cause analysis only gives us a clue as to what the problem is. Now we need to generate the solution. We need to validate, first of all, that these are the real causes with the key stakeholders, and then finally come up with a plan. Now, why go through the rigor of conducting the root cause analysis rather than just recommend something? Because we want to be sure that whatever we are recommending, we deal with the issue. So if we don't understand what the issue is, it will be difficult to give a recommendation that will fix it permanently. And so that is why we do talk about root cause analysis. And so for each of the steps, I'll just run through them quickly. These 5 steps, let's take a look at them very briefly, and then I'll end this first part. First step, like I mentioned, is for you to define the problem. Be clear. It's important to be clear about what you want to resolve. If you don't have the problem well defined, it's going to be a challenge to really go through a root cause analysis. As human beings, by nature, we are naturally inclined to finding solutions to fixing issues, whether it's personal, in our home, in our marriage, in our career, in our business, whatever. And there are so many challenges that we all face, whether it's health-wise, whether it's financial, whether it's whatever kind of, challenges. So, first thing first, let's define the problem. As you define the problem, a number of things will become clear. You need to be clear about what's the distinction between symptoms, causes, and issues are. So it's like a tripod. The symptoms may not necessarily be the issue. In fact, most times when you look at your health or health challenges, the symptoms of headache, for instance, and fever, which are typical common symptoms, sometimes including body pains, do not necessarily mean that that's all that's wrong with you. And they also do not necessarily mean that the person has, maybe for instance, malaria. If you are from sub-Saharan Africa, you may have other things that are being expressed by your body system through that headache and fever. And that's why the doctors would ask you to get a clinical test done. Once they get the result of the test, then they know what to recommend or what kind of treatment plan. The same thing is what we're trying to do here. You must be clear. Be sure that you are not taking the symptom as a problem. And when there are several causes, let's identify them and let's know what the issue is. So issues are the so whats. The causes are the reasons why the issue has arisen. Sometimes the relationship between issues and root causes is something that looks like a web. There are two scenarios that can come. There are scenarios where one root cause is responsible for several issues. And there are scenarios where an issue, a problem, an event has several root causes. So either way, in the course of the analysis, we should be able to map this appropriately to say, okay, this problem has about 3 root causes. There are 3 things that led to this. Or the following problems, all these 3 have the same root cause. It is this same root cause that led to this, that led to this, that led to this. Is important. The third thing to do is to identify which method you want to use to conduct the root cause analysis. So there are several methods. There is the 5 whys, there is the fishbone diagram, there is the behavioral engineering audit model, there is the Pareto chart, there is the failure mode and effect analysis, and quite a number of others. So you need to select the approach you want to use. Structured analysis using a root cause analysis approach. So whichever one you are comfortable with. The next step, after you have now conducted the root cause itself, you've come up with so many options or possible causes. Those ones need to be validated with the key stakeholders. And that's where, when we talk about the responsibility, it's a joint responsibility. You conduct the root cause analysis with a team of people who are owners or stakeholders in the process, who also see the benefits or who are also desirous of seeing that problem solved. When you have multiple stakeholders as part of your root cause analysis or the validation process, one of the benefits is that it helps you to come up with a strong action plan, because you are able to leverage the experiences of those individuals or teams from different exposures and parts of the business. And when these sessions are happening, it's important to remind ourselves that we must follow brainstorming rules. We must not allow criticism of any idea to jeopardize the interest of what we're doing. No idea is stupid. Sometimes some of the best solutions come up sounding hard, almost appropriate to be thrown over the window. But when they are subjected to further look and critical analysis, we realize that the solution lies in those things that does not look interesting at the beginning. Allow ideas to flow freely. Rewrite and restate the problem statements if you think that the group is derailing, and this can happen quite often. Side talks can degenerate into discussion that takes the team away from the main thing. Take time to walk through the process. When all of this has been done, then an action plan should be agreed. We must not be caught in the web of discussions and sessions, long meetings, at the end of the day that does not produce any concrete solution to the problem that set out to solve ab initio. I've seen many workshops and sessions that ended, and at the end of the day, you ask, okay, so what is the final solution? What are we taking out of this discussion? So, as internal audit teams, when we facilitate this kind of workshops or sessions, we must harm ourselves and equip ourselves with what we need to drive at, what we want to achieve. The objectives must be our focus. So as discussions go, you are there to guide. And even if you are not the one anchoring the session, you can play the role of the one that brings the team back to focus attention and then document what needs to be documented. Now, this is where we'll stop for the first part of this video. We're looking at root cause analysis as a platform to enhance the effectiveness of the internal audit function. I'll see you again in the second part of this video. Thank you.